I'm Doug with Diesel Power Plus, and today we're going to cover some of the things that happen when you pay the quickie oil change place to change your fuel filter. So here we have a 96 Ford that had a few issues, and I will show you exactly what happens, or what typically happens if you have your quick oil change place change the fuel filter. You get the fuel filter cap loosened up. Put that wrench back over there. Spin that fuel filter out. We'll set it to the side. They're out of the way. Now that is not a factory fuel filter or factory fuel filter cap, so we would start out with a Ford fuel filter cap, which will be in an international bag with the part number covered up. Set that aside. Got a factory cap. We have a factory new Motorcraft fuel filter for this truck. OBS Ford is going to be a FD 4595. Take that guy. Be very careful not to cut the actual filter itself or the O-ring. In this case, we will not need that O-ring because the new fuel filter cap comes with an O-ring. But those of you that actually do quite a bit of work on these trucks would like to have an extra O-ring. Every time you take the fuel filter cap off, the O-ring's never the same size. Put that fuel filter, the new fuel filter, into the new fuel filter lid. Now this probably would not happen at the quickie oil change place due to the fact that we're using OEM parts, not aftermarket parts. Usually they would just buy an aftermarket fuel filter. That aftermarket fuel filter would come with a cap on it, or most of them do. We lube that O-ring. We lube the O-ring. Don't forget to lube the O-ring on the inside. And you take that fuel filter and you put it right back in there. And you can take a wrench. A wrench really doesn't fit these really well. They do make a Ford fuel filter wrench for it that fits a little bit better. And a lot of guys will use a pair of channel locks or a screwdriver. But if you get that oil filter wrench in there just right, it will work. And there you have it. That is typically what you would get. Now let me show you what you actually paid for. Was a new fuel filter from Ford, a new fuel filter cap, and a few minutes labor for some highly unskilled individual to just screw a fuel filter back into your truck without doing everything that should have been done. Get this guy back up out of there. There's our base. So you can see that new fuel filter has some nasty stuff on it. That is usually what happens when you paid for a fuel filter change. Now we're going to get a close-up of what is actually in the bottom of that fuel filter base. As you can see, there's quite a bit of water, rust, trash, and muck in there. That usually never gets removed. Now on this truck, the fuel tank was actually full of that, both of them. And we have actually removed the fuel tanks and cleaned the tanks already. But this is what was actually in the tanks and was in the fuel filter base when the truck got here. So when we do a fuel filter, we pull the fuel filter out of the base. Then we clean the base out, and you can clean that base out with a turkey baster like that. You can clean that base out with a suction gun available at O'Reilly's, or Napa or AutoZone, probably $15. You can put it down in there. Now a lot of guys will say, why don't you just open the water drain and use the water drain and rinse it out? Well, the reason that we can't, or we don't, because the O-rings on that water drain are usually old and dried out and cracked. And if we open the water drain and it leaks the next day, which it will, it's really hard for us to explain to the customer why it leaks now when it did not leak before they brought it to us. So we've developed a few other methods. One is to just suck it out from the top, and that seems to work the best for us. This is the suction gun available. This is the turkey baster available. We get those out of our way. And I'll show you what we actually use. It's a vacuum powered or air powered vacuum suction device. So that one has enough trash in it plugged up. So we'll need to rinse this out and suck it out again. The only thing we'll use to rinse it out with is going to be clean diesel fuel. Now you don't have to have it in a beaker like this, but we do. We use a beaker so that we can get a precise measurement on the amount of fuel that we use. Just kidding. You can see that after one rinsing, it looks much cleaner than it did before. Now we'll proceed to vacuum out for the second run. As you can see, that is some pretty nasty stuff we're pulling out of that fuel filter base. And most of your quick oil change places would have just left that in there and put the new fuel filter in. And we'll put we'll put diesel in this one more time. Rinse it out really good. And we'll vacuum it out of there, clean it up. If you get a close-up of that, you'll see that we have significantly cleaned up the fuel filter can and the fuel that was in it. That is a lot cleaner than it was. At this point, we'll take a little bit of fuel, we'll put in it, take a clean rag, and we'll put some fuel on the clean rag. We're not going to put anything in the fuel filter housing besides clean fuel and trans gel or assembly lube. Other than that, we're not going to introduce any foreign chemicals to a fuel filter housing. Only the things it was actually designed to operate with. And if it just takes a little more elbow grease, it just takes a little more elbow grease. We're not going to introduce a chemical cleaner to it. At this point, you're going to be able to see how much cleaner the fuel filter is, the fuel filter housing is. I'm going to need to go get a little bit more fuel. And here you have the fuel that we did pull out of this truck. This is just about what it looked like at the bottom of the fuel tanks also. There's some water at the very bottom, a lot of rust, and there's been a fuel treatment applied that has kept that rust suspended. You really have to watch what fuel treatment you use. This is a little more than what is typical, but there is usually a lot of dirt in the bottom of a fuel filter. When you pull the fuel filter out, most people just put a new fuel filter right back in that dirt. Well, after going and getting some more fuel, that has not settled out like it should have settled out. That does not look anywhere near like it should yet. We're going to vacuum that out of there one more time. Now we'll put some more fuel in this and see how that looks. Remember, this is not a exercise in how fast we can do it. This is an exercise in whether or not he needs to buy a set of injectors when he leaves here. So if we do this right, we very well could save him thousands and thousands of dollars rather than just kicking it out the door, hoping we can make a quick buck, and it costing him a lot of money in the long run. So we'll set that aside. It looks like we're going to vacuum it one more time, and then we should be good to go from that point. So we'll vacuum it one more time. And with that vacuuming, it is very clean inside that fuel filter base now at this point. Keep in mind, we did remove the tanks and clean the tanks on this truck. It had a lot of nasty in it. It did drive in though. This truck actually started, ran, and drove in. And all of the fuel that we use here at Diesel Power Plus actually goes through multiple 2-micron filters before we put it in a truck. Whether or not we're just changing a fuel filter with it, or if we're doing a drop and clean and actually restoring a fuel system. Now we would take our cap. Look at that guy, it got a little bit of trash on it, so we'll wipe it down. It's our new Ford cap. If you're going to use a new Ford cap or a new Ford filter, and it's had an aftermarket filter in it, it will need a factory cap. So here we have our new cap. We'll take another new Ford filter. There's no way we're putting the trash that was on that other one in there. This one we will need the O-ring from. Once again, that Motorcraft part number on a OBS or a older body style Ford is FD 4595. Foxtrot Delta 4595. This O-ring we'll need, so we will cut it out of there. There's instructions in the package on how the O-ring goes on the cap. And you can use a screwdriver to loosen it, which is what we usually do, but we have the top removed. So that's how your filter and O-ring go on the cap. Put that guy together. This one's got a wrinkle in it. It's going to make it a little more fun. We'll clean our hands. Use a little bit of trans gel. Lube that O-ring with it. You always want to lube that O-ring with trans gel or fuel. You don't want to use an engine oil or a product like that. Put our filter in it, and it snaps into those two little grooves, like that. Just a touch of trans gel on the center O-ring. Then this guy will go in the truck. The filter can, we filled it about halfway to 2/3 of the way full of fuel. It says install slowly right on it. I think I got that covered. And we'll get it snugged up a little bit here. And there we have it. That is a fuel filter change or a fuel filter replacement on an OBS Ford. The procedure is very similar on a Dodge Cummins or anything else the filter drops in from the top. We do this very procedure probably 3 to 4 times a day with the cleaning of the fuel filter cans. We want to try to make sure that that filter is as clean as possible when it goes in. Thank you and have a good day.